The scent of rain-soaked asphalt and expensive perfume clung to the air in their pristine Boston brownstone. 24-year-old Ava Thornton stood frozen in the hallway, her hand resting protectively on the gentle swell of her 4-month pregnancy. The voices from the study were hushed, venomous whispers, not meant for her ears. It was her husband Richard and her best friend Samantha. "She can't find out," Samantha hissed. "Not until the merger is complete. Her trust fund was the seed money, Richard. We need to keep her docile." Richard's reply was a cold blade to Ava's heart. "Don't worry. She's so naive, so wrapped up in this baby. She won't suspect a thing." Life for Ava Thornton had felt like a beautifully written storybook. She had met Richard Thornton during her final year at Boston University. He was charming, ambitious, with eyes the color of a summer sky and a smile that could disarm armies. He was a business student with grand dreams, and she, an art history major, was captivated by his drive. They married a year after graduation in a sun-drenched ceremony at her family's modest country home. Her parents, though not wealthy, had given her everything, including a small but significant trust fund left by her grandmother. Money she had happily invested in Richard's fledgling tech startup, Innovate Solutions. Their first 2 years of marriage were a whirlwind of building their life together. They bought a 3-story brownstone on Beacon Hill, a home filled with laughter, the smell of Ava's baking and Richard's late-night calls about venture capital and stock options. Ava poured her heart into creating a sanctuary for them. She curated every piece of art, chose every fabric, and tended to a small rooftop garden with meticulous care. When she found out she was pregnant, their perfect picture felt complete. Richard had been ecstatic, or so she thought. He'd held her, spun her around in the living room, and promised their child the world. Her best friend, Samantha Cole, had been there through it all. They'd been inseparable since their freshman year, 2 halves of a whole. Samantha was the fiery, pragmatic one to Ava's gentle, creative spirit. She was the maid of honor at their wedding, the first person Ava told about the pregnancy. Samantha had shrieked with joy, hugging her tightly and immediately planning the baby shower. She was a constant presence in their home, a part of their little family. The 3 of them were a team. The first crack in the facade appeared subtly, a late night at the office that didn't quite add up, a lingering scent of a perfume that wasn't Ava's on Richard's suit jacket, a new expensive watch that he claimed was a gift from a client. Ava, trusting and deeply in love, dismissed these as anxieties of a first-time mother. She was hormonal emotional. Richard was working hard for their future, for their baby. She told herself this 100 times a day, a mantra against the creeping unease in her gut. The night the world fell apart started like any other Tuesday. A light drizzle slicked the cobblestone streets outside. Ava had spent the afternoon preparing Richard's favorite meal, a hearty beef bourguignon, its rich aroma filling the house. He was late, but he'd called to say he was bringing Samantha over to finalize some paperwork for the upcoming merger, a deal that was supposed to make them millionaires. Ava was thrilled for him for them. She was in the kitchen humming softly as she set the table when she heard the front door open. She smiled, ready to greet them, but their low, urgent tones stopped her in her tracks. They hadn't seen her. They had slipped into the study, leaving the heavy oak door slightly ajar. Curiosity, a feeling she rarely indulged, pulled her closer. She crept down the hallway, her bare feet silent on the polished hardwood floors. "She can't find out." Samantha's voice was a sharp, conspiratorial whisper. "Not until the merger is complete. Her trust fund was the seed money, Richard. We need to keep her docile and happy until the ink is dry. After that, We can tell her." Ava's blood ran cold. Her trust fund Richard had told her his own family had provided the initial investment. A wave of nausea, sharper than any morning sickness she'd experienced, washed over her. Richard's voice was smooth, confident, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Don't worry. She's so naive, so wrapped up in this baby. She won't suspect a thing. A few more weeks is all we need. Once the Blackwood deal is signed, we'll have more money than we know what to do with. We can finally be together properly." The name Blackwood meant nothing to her. But the rest of it, be together properly. The words echoed in the sudden roaring silence of her mind. A strangled gasp escaped her lips, a sound so small she was sure they couldn't have heard it. But it was enough to silence the pounding in her own ears. Peeking through the crack in the door, she saw it. The final damning proof. Richard wasn't standing across the room from Samantha. He was behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, his lips pressing against her neck. Samantha's head was tilted back in pleasure, her hand resting on his. It was a gesture of intimate, practiced familiarity. The lie was not just in their words. It was in their bodies, in the casual way they occupied each other's space. The world tilted on its axis. Every shared laugh, every tender kiss, every promise for the future replayed in her mind, now tainted with deceit. Her best friend and her husband. The two people she loved and trusted most in the world. They hadn't just betrayed her. They had built their success on her, using her love and her money as stepping stones. She was a means to an end. A docile, naive, pregnant fool. Something inside her snapped. The heartbreak was a physical force, a crushing weight on her chest. But beneath it a cold, hard resolve began to form. She would not stay here and be their fool. She would not let her child be born into this house of lies. Quietly, she backed away from the door, her movements mechanical. She went upstairs to their bedroom, the room where they had dreamed of their future, and pulled a duffel bag from the back of the closet. She didn't pack much. A few clothes, her prenatal vitamins, the small ultrasound picture of the tiny life growing inside her, and the worn copy of Pride and Prejudice her mother had given her. She took the cash she had in her jewelry box, a few $100s, and her wallet. She left the credit cards Richard paid for on the dresser. She left the engagement ring, a beautiful diamond, that now felt like a shackle beside them. She took one last look around the beautiful home she had created, a museum of a life that was never real. The scent of the beef bourguignon, her peace offering, now seemed cloying and sickening. With her hand on her belly, a silent promise to her unborn child, Ava Thornton walked out the front door, closing it softly behind her. The Boston drizzle had turned into a steady, cleansing rain. She pulled up the hood of her coat and disappeared into the night with no destination in mind, only the unshakable certainty that she was never, ever coming back. The first 24 hours were a blur of motion and numb disbelief. Ava walked until her feet were raw, the city lights of Boston smearing through her tear-filled eyes. She found a cheap bus station and bought a one-way ticket to a place she'd only seen on a postcard, Havenwood, a small, sleepy town in coastal Maine. It was far enough, anonymous enough. The bus ride was a long, rattling journey through the darkness each mile, putting physical distance between her and the life that had imploded. She stared out the window, her reflection a pale, ghostly image superimposed over the fleeting lights of the highway, her mind a chaotic storm of betrayal and fear. She arrived in Havenwood with $97 and a duffel bag. The town was quaint, with a salt-laced breeze that whipped off the Atlantic and a main street lined with clapboard-fronted shops. It was the off-season, and a melancholic quiet had settled over the town. She found a room at the Seaside Motel, a faded blue building with a flickering neon sign. The room was small and smelled of stale cigarette smoke and bleach, a stark contrast to her luxurious brownstone. But it was a sanctuary. It was hers alone. The first week she barely left the room. Grief came in relentless waves, a physical ache that left her breathless. She cried for the husband she thought she had, for the friend she had lost, and for the future that had been stolen from her. But every time the despair threatened to swallow her whole, she would feel a tiny flutter in her womb, a gentle kick that was both a reminder of what she had lost and a powerful anchor to the present. This was no longer just about her. She had to survive for her child. With her money dwindling fast, survival became a stark daily reality. She forced herself out of the motel room and started looking for work. It was a humiliating experience. Her art history degree was useless here. She was visibly pregnant, and potential employers' eyes would flick from her face to her belly with poorly concealed dismissal. She was turned away from the local diner, the bookstore, and the small art gallery. Desperate, she took a job cleaning rooms at the very motel she was staying in. The irony was not lost on her. She who had once debated the merits of Matisse versus Monet over brunch was now scrubbing toilets and changing soiled linens for minimum wage. The work was grueling. Her body ached and her hands were raw, but with every clean room she felt a sliver of pride. It was honest work. It was her own. Her evenings were spent in the local library, a warm, quiet haven that smelled of old paper and wood polish. She read everything she could about childcare, nutrition, and finances. She was creating a new future from scratch, one pamphlet and one book at a time. It was in the library that she met Eleanor Vance. Eleanor was a woman in her late 60s, with a cloud of white hair, bright, intelligent eyes, and a no-nonsense demeanor. She was a retired librarian who still volunteered 3 days a week. She noticed Ava, the quiet, pregnant woman, who came in every evening and read with such fierce concentration. One evening, as Ava was checking out a book on prenatal yoga, Eleanor struck up a conversation. "That's a good one," Eleanor said, her voice warm but direct. "Helps with the back pain. You're new in town, aren't you?" Ava, who had been avoiding any real human connection, found herself surprisingly willing to talk to this kind-faced stranger. "Yes, I just moved here a few weeks ago." Eleanor didn't pry. She didn't ask about a husband or a family. She simply nodded. "Well, welcome to Havenwood. It's a good place to catch your breath." Over the next few weeks, their brief conversations blossomed into a tentative friendship. Eleanor would leave a thermos of herbal tea for Ava at the front desk, or save her a newspaper. She learned Ava was working at the motel, and living there too. One particularly cold November evening, Ava was walking back from the library when a sudden wave of dizziness overcame her. She hadn't eaten enough that day, too exhausted to do more than nibble on some crackers. She stumbled, leaning against the cold brick wall of the bakery, the world spinning around her. A car pulled over, and Eleanor got out, her face etched with concern. "Ava, heaven's child, you look white as a sheet. Get in the car this instant." Without arguing, Ava let Eleanor help her into the passenger seat. Instead of taking her back to the motel, Eleanor drove to her own small, cozy cottage overlooking the ocean. The house was filled with books and plants and the smell of cinnamon. Eleanor sat her down at the kitchen table and placed a steaming bowl of chicken soup in front of her. As Ava ate, the warmth of the soup spreading through her, the dam she had so carefully constructed inside her finally broke. The whole story came pouring out, The betrayal, the lies, the escape, the fear. She sobbed her body, shaking with months of pent-up pain. Eleanor listened patiently, her expression never changing from one of calm empathy. When Ava was finished, her voice raw, and her eyes swollen, Eleanor simply reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Some men are fools, my dear," she said softly, "and some women are snakes. But you are a survivor, and you have a little one to think about now." That night, Eleanor made her a proposition. She had a spare room, small but clean and warm. She offered it to Ava rent-free in exchange for some help around the house. "It's not good for you or the baby to be in that motel," she stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And frankly, I could use the company." Ava looked at this woman, this near stranger who was offering her a lifeline with no strings attached. For the first time in months, she saw not pity in someone's eyes, but respect. Tears welled up again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. She accepted. Moving into Eleanor's cottage marked a new chapter in her struggle. She had a safe place to live, nutritious food to eat, and a friend to lean on. She continued to work, saving every dollar she could. Life was still hard. She missed the simple comforts of her old life, the thoughtless ease of it all. But she was building something new, something that was entirely her own, forged in hardship and resilience. As her belly grew, so did her strength. She was no longer just a victim of betrayal. She was a mother, a survivor, and a woman on the brink of discovering just how powerful she truly was. The Maine winter gave way to a brisk spring, and Ava's due date drew closer. She had settled into a quiet rhythm in Havenwood. Her days were spent cleaning at the motel, her evenings helping Eleanor with her garden, or sitting by the fire, knitting tiny sweaters for the baby. She had saved a respectable sum of money, enough for the hospital bills and to support herself for a few months after the birth. She had even made a few friends through a local mothers group. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt a sense of peace, a fragile but persistent hope for the future. The letter arrived on a Tuesday in early April. It was delivered by a courier, a man in a sharp suit who looked comically out of place on Eleanor's rustic porch. The envelope was thick, made of heavy, cream-colored cardstock with an embossed return address, Sterling and Finch, Elm Park Avenue, New York. Ava stared at it, her heart thudding with a strange mix of curiosity and dread. She didn't know anyone in New York. She assumed it was a mistake. "Well, are you going to open it or just stare a hole through it?" Eleanor prompted, peering over her glasses from her armchair. With trembling fingers, Ava slit the envelope open. The letterhead was formal, the language dense with legal terminology. It was addressed to Miss Ava Blackwood. She frowned. Blackwood was her mother's maiden name, a name she hadn't used in years. Her mother, who had passed away when Ava was a teenager, had been estranged from her own family, a topic she always refused to discuss. All Ava knew was that her maternal grandfather was some sort of reclusive businessman. The letter was from a man named Heiress Sterling, a senior partner at the law firm. It stated in no uncertain terms that her maternal grandfather, Mr. Augustus Blackwood, had passed away a month prior. As his only known living descendant, she was named the sole beneficiary of his entire estate. The letter politely but firmly requested her presence in New York City at her earliest convenience to discuss the details of the inheritance. Ava read the letter 3 times. It felt like a prank, a cruel, elaborate joke. Her grandfather. The man who was just a ghost in her family's history. She remembered asking her mother about him once, and her mother's face had clouded over. "He is a man who values business over blood, Ava. We are better off without him." That was all she had ever said. "What is it, dear?" Eleanor asked, noticing Ava's pale face. Ava handed her the letter, unable to form the words. Eleanor's eyes widened as she read. "My goodness," she breathed, looking from the letter to Ava. "Augustus Blackwood. I've heard that name. He was a titan, real estate tech investments, one of the wealthiest men in the country. They called him the Shadow of Wall Street because he was so private. The scale of it was incomprehensible. Ava's world, which had shrunk to the size of a small coastal town, and the baby in her belly, suddenly exploded into a universe of unknown variables. A billionaire grandfather. An estate. It couldn't be real. It was likely a mistake, a mix-up with another Ava Blackwood. Despite her disbelief, a seed of possibility was planted. She called the number on the letterhead. A crisp, professional voice answered Sterling and Finch. She asked for Mr. Harrison Sterling and, to her surprise, was put right through. "Ms. Blackwood, thank you for calling." His voice was deep and kind. "I know this must be a tremendous shock. I was your grandfather's personal attorney and friend for over 30 years. I can assure you this is no mistake. We've been searching for you since your mother passed. Augustus, he regretted his estrangement from your mother more than anything. He spent his last years trying to find you." The lawyer's words chipped away at her disbelief. He explained that Augustus had left behind a colossal fortune, a multinational corporation called Blackwood Enterprises, properties all over the world, and a portfolio of investments that would take months to fully catalogue. And it was all hers. The decision to go to New York was terrifying. It meant leaving the safe cocoon she had built in Havenwood. It meant stepping into a world she knew nothing about. Eleanor, in her infinite wisdom, was the one who pushed her. "This isn't about the money, Ava," she said, her hands on Ava's shoulders. "This is about your child's future. It's about taking back control. You owe it to yourself to see what this is." A week later, Ava was on a train to New York City. Eleanor had insisted on lending her a simple but elegant maternity dress, a far cry from her usual worn jeans. As the train pulled into Penn Station, the sheer scale of the city was overwhelming. A car sent by Mr. Sterling was waiting for her. The drive to his office on Park Avenue felt like a journey to another planet, the city's towering glass and steel canyons, a world away from Havenwood's wind-swept shores. Harrison Sterling was exactly as his voice had suggested, a distinguished man in his late 60s with silver hair and a reassuring presence. His office was a sanctuary of dark wood, leather-bound books and quiet dignity. He treated Ava not as a lottery winner, but as a long-lost family member. He spent hours walking her through the basics of the estate. He showed her a picture of her grandfather, a stern-looking man with intelligent eyes that were strikingly similar to her own. He explained that Augustus had been a difficult, demanding man who had driven his only daughter away with his obsession with work. But in his later years, he had softened, filled with remorse. He had hired private investigators to find Ava, but she had changed her name to Thornton and moved, making the search difficult. He had amended his will to leave her everything, hoping that it might in some small way atone for his failings as a father and grandfather. He wanted you to have the security he failed to give your mother. Mr. Sterling concluded, his voice gentle. He left you a letter. He handed her an envelope identical to the one she had received in Maine. Inside, the handwriting was spidery and weak, but the words were clear. My dearest Ava, if you are reading this, then I have failed to find you in time, and it is my life's greatest regret. I was a fool. I chose my empire over my family, and I lost the only thing that ever truly mattered, my daughter. I know I cannot undo the pain I caused her, or the silence I imposed upon your life. This fortune, this empire. It was all built for her, for you. It is a poor substitute for a grandfather's love. I know, but please use it to build a life of strength, independence, and happiness. Be the woman your mother always was, and the woman I was too blind to appreciate. Do not let anyone ever make you feel small again. Your loving grandfather. Augustus' tears streamed down Ava's face as she read the letter. It was an apology, a validation, a gift from a man she had never known. The money was staggering, yes, but it was the letter that changed everything. It wasn't just an inheritance. It was a legacy, a second chance, a mandate to be strong. Sitting in that opulent office with the city humming below, Ava made a decision. She would not run from this. She would embrace it. She would learn, she would grow, and she would build a life for her child that was safe and secure. She would become the woman her grandfather had hoped she would be. The broken, betrayed wife was gone. In her place, Ava Blackwood was beginning to take shape. The 5 years that followed were a crucible of transformation. Ava didn't just inherit a fortune. She inherited an empire, and with it a staggering responsibility. The first year was a blur of legal briefings, board meetings, and intensive tutoring. Harrison Sterling became her mentor, a steadfast guide through the labyrinthine world of corporate finance mergers and acquisitions. He shielded her from the circling sharks of the business world, the opportunistic executives within Blackwood Enterprises, who saw a naive young woman ripe for manipulation. They were sorely mistaken. Driven by the memory of her grandfather's letter and the promise she had made to her unborn child, Ava devoured information with a ferocious appetite. She traded her art history books for tomes on economic theory and market analysis. She spent 18-hour days with tutors, analysts, and department heads, her pregnant belly a constant presence at the long mahogany boardroom table. She wasn't just learning to manage her inheritance, she was learning to command it. 2 months after arriving in New York, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Noah Blackwood, holding him in her arms in the private hospital suite overlooking Central Park. She felt a profound shift. Every decision she made from that moment on would be for him. He was her true north, the center of her new universe. Ava Blackwood, the CEO, emerged slowly, and then all at once. She proved to have a natural, incisive intellect that her grandfather would have admired. She had an artist's eye for detail and an intuitive understanding of people, which, when combined with her newfound financial acumen, made her a formidable leader. She wasn't ruthless like her grandfather had been, but she was decisive and unflinching. She cut away the dead wood in the company-promoted innovative young minds and steered Blackwood Enterprises into new socially conscious ventures in green technology and affordable housing, earning the respect of her board and the admiration of the business community. Her public persona was one of controlled elegance and mystery. She rarely gave interviews, and the few photos that surfaced showed a woman of breathtaking poise. Her wardrobe of simple, impeccably tailored suits in shades of charcoal, navy, and cream became her armor. Her gentle demeanor was gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable confidence that commanded attention in any room she entered. She was no longer Ava Thornton, the betrayed wife. She was A.B., the enigmatic head of one of the world's most powerful private corporations. Her private life was a fortress built around her son. They lived in a stunning penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue with panoramic views of the city. But it was not a cold, sterile space. It was a home filled with Noah's finger paintings, taped to the billion-dollar art on the walls, the sound of his laughter echoing off the marble floors, and the smell of the simple, healthy meals Ava often insisted on cooking herself. She never forgot Havenwood or the kindness Eleanor Vance had shown her. She had bought Eleanor's cottage and the land around it, ensuring the older woman would live out her days in comfort and security. Eleanor was a frequent visitor to New York, a beloved grandmother figure to Noah, and a vital link to the woman Ava had been. She was the only one who called her Ava, a reminder of the journey she had undertaken. By the time Noah turned 5, Ava Blackwood was a name whispered with a mixture of awe and intimidation on Wall Street. A feature in Forbes magazine titled The Blackwood Renaissance detailed her spectacular success in doubling the company's net worth. The article included a professionally shot photograph of her. She was standing in her office, the New York skyline sprawling behind her. She was looking directly at the camera, her expression calm and powerful, her eyes holding a depth of wisdom that hinted at a life lived far beyond her 30 years. She knew that sooner or later the photograph would find its way to Boston. She had prepared herself for that moment for 5 years. She was no longer afraid of her past. She was the architect of her present and the master of her future. The thought of Richard and Samantha no longer brought a sharp sting of pain, only a distant, cold pity. They were a chapter in a book she had long since finished reading. Little did she know that chapter was about to violently reopen. While Ava Blackwood ascended, Richard Thornton spiraled. The Blackwood deal he had been so confident about 5 years ago had mysteriously fallen through days after Ava left. The venture capitalists, spooked by the sudden instability, had pulled out. Richard had never understood why. The merger, which was supposed to be his crowning achievement, collapsed, and with it, his dreams of easy fortune. Innovate Solutions. The company built on Ava's trust fund floundered. Richard was a charismatic salesman, but he lacked true business acumen. He made a series of reckless investments, trying to recapture the momentum he had lost. He and Samantha moved into a smaller apartment, then a smaller one still. The glamorous life they had envisioned, funded by their betrayal, never materialized. Their relationship, once a thrilling, illicit affair, soured under the harsh glare of financial pressure. Samantha's affection had been tied to Richard's promise of wealth. Without it, she became resentful and shrewish. Their days were filled with bitter arguments about money, their nights with a cold, resentful silence. Samantha constantly reminded him of what they had lost, of the naive wife he had let slip through his fingers. Richard, in turn, blamed her for pushing him to be so ruthless, so hasty. Richard was in his cramped, cluttered office, staring at a stack of unpaid invoices, when his business partner, a man named George, tossed a magazine onto his desk. "You see this?" George asked, tapping the cover of Forbes. Richard glanced at it. The headline read, "The Blackwood Renaissance, How AB is Redefining the Modern Empire." He grunted, uninterested, in another story about some trust fund CEO. "So what?" "So look at the picture inside," George insisted, flipping open to the main article. Richard's eyes fell upon the full-page photograph of the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. The world around him seemed to stop. The tailored suit, the confident posture, the opulent office, it was all just background noise. He saw only her face. It was Ava. It was undeniably, shockingly Ava. But it was a version of her he had never seen before. The softness was gone, replaced by a steeliness in her eyes. The tentative smile he remembered was now a firm, unreadable line. She was beautiful more so than he remembered, but it was a beauty that was distant and untouchable, like a star in a far-off galaxy. His blood turned to ice. Ava. Ava Blackwood. Her mother's maiden name. The Blackwood deal. It all crashed down on him with the force of a physical blow. The deal that had collapsed 5 years ago. It was her family's company. She must have inherited it. She had been the heiress to $1 billion fortune all along, and he had thrown her away. He had thrown her away for a failing startup and a toxic relationship. A wave of nausea and a dizzying sense of loss washed over him. But beneath the shock, a more familiar, insidious emotion began to stir greed. "That's her," Richard whispered, his voice hoarse. "That's my wife." George stared at him, dumbfounded. Your ex-wife. The one who ran off. She didn't run off." Richard lied, his mind already spinning, rewriting history. "We had a misunderstanding. I've been looking for her for years." He spent the next few days obsessed, digging up every piece of information he could find on Ava Blackwood. He read about her son Noah, born roughly 9 months after she had left. His son. The realization hit him with a jolt. He had a son, an heir to the Blackwood fortune. The possibilities were intoxicating. He showed the article to Samantha. Her reaction was not one of shock, but of pure, unadulterated fury. "You idiot!" she shrieked, her face contorted with rage. "You absolute fool! She was sitting on a gold mine, and you let her walk away. We could have had everything. We can still get it," Richard said, a desperate gleam in his eye. "She was my wife. That boy is my son. I have rights." "Rights?" Samantha laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You have nothing. She's a billionaire, Richard. She could crush you like a bug without even noticing." But Richard was undeterred. Desperation had made him reckless. His company was weeks from bankruptcy. He was about to lose everything. Ava was his only hope. He convinced himself that she must still have feelings for him. He was the father of her child, after all. He would apologize, grovel if he had to. He would tell her he had made a terrible mistake, that he had ended things with Samantha years ago. He would paint a picture of a lonely, repentant man who had never stopped loving her. He formulated a plan. He couldn't just call her. He needed to get in front of her. He discovered that Blackwood Enterprises had a venture capital division that invested in promising tech startups. It was a long shot, but it was his only shot. He spent a week polishing a proposal for Innovate Solutions, filling it with exaggerated projections and outright lies. He submitted it through the official channels, hoping for a miracle. He requested a meeting with the head of the division, never daring to ask for the CEO herself. He just needed to get his foot in the door of that building, that gleaming tower on Park Avenue. He just needed one chance to see her again. The email came 2 weeks later. It was from the office of the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. Richard's heart hammered against his ribs as he read it. His proposal, against all odds, had been selected for a preliminary review. But it wasn't a meeting with a division head. The email stated that Ms. Blackwood herself took a personal interest in emerging tech and would be sitting in on the pitch meeting. It was scheduled for the following Wednesday at 10 a.m. A euphoric, dizzying sense of victory surged through him. It had worked. Ava wanted to see him. She must. Why else would the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation agree to meet with a failing startup? She had seen his name and arranged this. She was giving him a chance. He told Samantha the news, and for the first time in years, she looked at him with something other than contempt. It was a greedy, calculating glimmer. "Don't mess this up, Richard," she warned, her voice low. "Remember what's at stake. Apologize. Cry. Tell her you want to be a father to your son. Do whatever it takes." The next few days were a frantic blur of preparation. Richard bought a new suit he couldn't afford, rehearsed his apology in the mirror, and practiced a look of deep, soulful remorse. He gathered old photos of him and Ava, tucking one into his breast pocket as a prop, a tangible reminder of the love he was about to profess. On Wednesday morning, he walked into the lobby of the Blackwood Tower. It was a cathedral of glass and steel, exuding power and wealth. His reflection in the polished marble floor looked small and insignificant. After a security check that was more thorough than any airport, he was escorted to a private elevator that whisked him silently to the 80th floor. The CEO's suite was larger than his entire apartment. The receptionist, a woman with an icily polite demeanor, instructed him to wait. The minutes crawled by, each tick of the minimalist clock on the wall, amplifying his anxiety. Finally, the receptionist nodded towards a set of massive double doors. "Ems, Blackwood will see you now." Richard straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and pushed the doors open. He stepped inside, his carefully rehearsed speech ready on his lips. The office was breathtaking. One entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window offering a godlike view of New York City. In the center of the room, behind a vast sculptural desk of dark mahogany, a high-backed leather chair was turned towards the window, obscuring its occupant. "Mr. Thornton," a voice said, "thank you for coming." The chair swiveled around slowly, and there she was, Ava. She was even more formidable in person than in the photograph. She wore a severe but elegant navy blue dress, her hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. She wasn't smiling. Her face was a mask of cool neutrality, her eyes assessing him with an unnerving calm. She looked at him not as a long-lost husband, but as a bug under a microscope. All of Richard's prepared words evaporated. He was struck dumb by the sheer, unbridgeable chasm between the woman in front of him and the girl he had betrayed. "Ava," he finally managed to stammer, his voice cracking. I can't believe it's you." He took a step forward, his hand instinctively going to the photo in his pocket. "That's Miss Blackwood," she corrected him, her voice as cold and sharp as ice. "Please have a seat. You're here to present a business proposal, I believe." She gestured to one of the two chairs in front of her desk. The gesture was a dismissal of their entire shared history. He was not a husband here. He was an appointment. The power dynamic was absolute. He was a beggar, and she was the queen. He sank into the chair, his confidence crumbling. "Ava, listen," he pleaded, abandoning all pretense of a business pitch. "I've been looking for you for 5 years. I was a fool. I made the biggest mistake of my life. What Samantha and I had, it was nothing. It ended right after you left. I was lost without you." Ava listened without a single flicker of emotion. She let the silence hang in the air after he finished amplifying his pathetic desperation. "Your personal life is of no interest to me, Mr. Thornton," she said finally. "We're here to discuss Innovate Solutions. According to this report from my analytics team," she slid a thick binder across the desk, "your company is insolvent. You have defaulted on 3 major loans, your burn rate is unsustainable, and your technology is already obsolete. You have no assets, Mr. Thornton. You are for all intents and purposes bankrupt. So tell me, why are you wasting my time?" Each word was a precise, devastating blow. She knew everything. He had walked into an execution. I thought, the baby." He stammered his last desperate gambit. "Our son. I saw the articles. He's my son, Ava. I deserve to know him. He deserves to know his father." For the first time, a flicker of something hard and dangerous entered Ava's eyes. "You will refer to my son as Noah," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper that was more menacing than a shout. "And let me be perfectly clear. You do not have a son. You have a biological connection to a child you abandoned, a child you never once looked for, a child you only became interested in when you discovered he was attached to a fortune. You don't deserve him. You will never know him. You will never ever come near him. She pressed a small button on her desk. Your proposal is rejected, Mr. Thornton. Security will see you out. As if on cue, two large, imposing security guards entered the office. Richard stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. The pathetic, repentant act fell away, revealing the ugly, entitled man beneath. You can't do this, he snarled, rising to his feet. I have rights. I'll take you to court. I'll tell everyone. You can't just erase me. Suddenly, the office doors burst open again. It was Samantha. She had evidently been waiting in the lobby, and growing impatient had somehow bluffed her way past the receptionist. She saw the security guards and the look on Richard's face, and immediately understood what had happened. So that's it, she shrieked at Ava, her voice shrill with envy and rage. You hide away with your billions and look down on the rest of us. You think you're so much better than us. Ava rose slowly from her chair, a picture of regal calm amidst their chaotic desperation. She looked from Richard's sputtering rage to Samantha's jealous tirade. Better. Ava's voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. No. I don't think I'm better. I know I am stronger. You two taught me that. You taught me that a vow can be broken, that love can be a lie, and that the worst betrayals come from those you trust the most. You took everything from me, and in doing so you gave me everything. You forced me to find a strength I never knew I had. So for that, I suppose I should thank you. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to the security guards. Please remove them from my building. As the guards took Richard and Samantha by the arms, dragging them protesting from her office, Ava turned back to the window, her back to the pathetic spectacle. She did not watch them leave. They were already part of her past. She looked out over the city, her city, and felt not triumph, not revenge, but a profound, quiet sense of peace. The final ghost had been exorcised. The last chain had been broken. She was finally completely free. The aftermath of the confrontation was swift and decisive. News of Richard Thornton's desperate failed pitch at Blackwood Enterprises, coupled with his subsequent unhinged behavior in the lobby, spread quickly through Boston's tight-knit business community. His already fragile reputation was shattered. Within a month, Innovate Solutions declared bankruptcy. Richard and Samantha, facing a mountain of debt and public humiliation, lost everything. Their toxic partnership finally imploded, and they went their separate ways, disappearing into the obscurity they had so desperately tried to escape. Ava never heard from them again. She did not need to. Their chapter was closed. With the past finally laid to rest, Ava felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. She had faced her demons and emerged not just unscathed but stronger. Her focus shifted entirely to the future, to her son, and to the empire she was continuing to build. She poured her energy into the philanthropic arm of her company, the Blackwood Foundation, establishing scholarships for underprivileged students and funding medical research. She was building a legacy, not of wealth, but of impact. Life settled into a new, joyful rhythm. Her days were a balance of commanding boardrooms and building Lego castles on the penthouse floor with Noah. He was a bright, happy child, full of laughter and curiosity, completely unaware of the dramatic circumstances of his birth. To him, Ava was simply Mommy, the center of his world, just as he was. The center of hers. It was at a charity gala for a new children's wing at a city hospital, a project she had personally funded, that she met Daniel Chen. He wasn't a banker or a CEO. He was the lead architect of the project, a man with warm, kind eyes and a passion for creating spaces that healed and inspired. He approached her not to talk about stock prices or market trends, but to discuss the way light would filter into the pediatric oncology ward. He didn't seem to know, or perhaps didn't care, that she was A.B., the powerful head of Blackwood Enterprises. He spoke to her as a person asking her opinion on the color palette for the playroom and sharing an amusing story about his own clumsy attempts at building a treehouse for his nephew. He was genuine intelligent and completely unintimidated by her wealth or position. Their first conversation led to a second, a site visit to the hospital, which then led to coffee and then dinner. Their relationship bloomed slowly, naturally built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared values. Daniel was drawn to her brilliant mind and her quiet strength, not her bank account. Ava, in turn, found herself opening up in a way she hadn't thought possible. With him, she wasn't a CEO or an heiress. She was just Ava. He made her laugh, challenged her ideas, and most importantly, he was wonderful with Noah. He taught Noah how to fly a kite in Central Park and showed him how to sketch the city skyline from their balcony. He saw their little family of 2 and seamlessly, gently became a part of it. One crisp autumn afternoon, about a year after they met, the 3 of them were walking through Central Park. Noah was running ahead, chasing a flurry of golden leaves, his laughter echoing in the cool air. Daniel reached over and took Ava's hand, his fingers lacing through hers. "You've built an incredible life, Ava," he said softly, his eyes full of admiration. "An empire, a foundation, all of it. It's amazing." Ava smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that reached her eyes. She looked at her son, the happy, carefree boy, who was her entire world. She looked at the man beside her, whose love was a quiet, steady warmth. "This is my empire," she said, squeezing his hand as she watched Noah. "He is. This peace, this happiness. This is the real fortune." She had walked away from a life of betrayal, pregnant, and with nothing to her name. She had been forged in the fires of hardship and had risen to a position of unimaginable power and wealth. But standing there, in the simple beauty of a perfect autumn day, Ava Blackwood knew the truth. The billions were just a tool. The penthouse, the company, the influence, they were all secondary. Her greatest treasure was the life she had fought so hard to create. A life filled not with the cold glitter of gold, but with the priceless warmth of love, laughter, and a future she could finally call her own. Ava's story is a powerful testament to the indomitable nature of the human spirit. It began in the ashes of a devastating betrayal, a moment that could have shattered her forever. Pregnant alone and stripped of everything she thought was real, she chose not to be a victim. Instead, she embarked on a journey of resilience, rebuilding her life one painful step at a time. The discovery of her inheritance was not the end of her story, but the catalyst for her true transformation. She harnessed her newfound power, not for revenge, but for growth, becoming a formidable leader and a loving mother. Her ultimate triumph wasn't in the boardroom or on the pages of a magazine, but in finding a genuine happiness and peace she had forged herself. Her journey reminds us that our greatest strength is often discovered in our deepest pain, and that true wealth is measured in love, integrity, and the courage to build a new beginning. If this story of resilience and empowerment resonated with you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more real-life dramas and inspiring stories. Thank you for listening.